group Discord, and yeah, I'm gonna take a look at this. The first game this was sent to us by Black, the Black player in this. And White starts off with G3. So let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at that theory. I'm actually pretty curious about G3 because I don't actually really have a great response to it. I would think probably D5 is the most common move, but beyond that, I would just sort of transpose it into like a D5 type game, and basically go from there. But I actually sort of wonder if there's established theory against it. Like I know G4 has established theory, so I wonder if G3 also has like a mainline established response. It's not an opening that people see too often, so I don't know. I would try to play like a normal game and like take control of the center, probably play D4 or D5, E5, and have the center control and space. But I actually sort of wonder if there's like established theories. So I think the first thing I want to do is like play this out to like move 7 off of like the most popular moves. Um, from here, it looks basically like a Queen's Pawn game, a King's Indian attack, but with pretty limited like development in the center by White. White might undermine with C4 or like D3 and then C4. But hey, welcome, Anch. How are you? Um, yeah. So I'm thinking, yeah, D3 and C4 or D3 and E4 maybe. But definitely like sort of curious about just looking at the main lines against this G3. This looks like modern. Yeah, I'm good. Pretty much. Yeah, just sort of pulling together the stream and yeah. I've got a bunch of games for this morning. A lot from the chess study group Discord, which you are the owner of. And I really appreciate your help with all of that. And yeah, I think at this point, that Discord is like most of the games that are getting played here. So it's awesome. It's been super helpful for me at least to get the material from that. So I really appreciate you reaching out and making that happen. Hey Kiro, good morning to you too. And if anyone knows, if anyone doesn't know what I'm talking about in terms of the chess study group, I'm just gonna post a link to it. Seems like a really good Discord with kind of a good like general vibe. And they've been really helpful in terms of providing material to this stream. So I'm happy to get that. Um, Here, let me pull. I'll just pull that and post the link. But if anyone's interested, yeah, this is the Discord, and actually, I'll post both of them. But this is the chess study group Discord link, which Anch runs, and I'll post. I actually have my own Discord now. I'm bad with Discord, but basically either way. You guys can post games for analysis, and I'll just put them right on the list as like the next available slot. My Discord is this one. But if either way, cool. Thanks for the game, Kiro. I'll add it for tonight at 6:05 p.m. Um, I we've got a full morning lined up, but we'll get to it as tonight. Is literally the stream that we can get to it. It's awesome to have more more material than open slots. I really remember when it was the other way. It's cool, Kiro. I posted it in my spreadsheet and I'll add it to the slaughter that Jen was nice enough to create. But yeah, this all yeah, these it's great. It's awesome to have enough material. I appreciate everyone helping so much with that, and yeah, your games are all really interesting and instructive. Um, so yeah, so basically either through the chess study group Discord, which Ants runs, or my Discord, they both have post game sections that I follow closely, and whenever anything goes up there, I just add it to the list, and we can do a lesson based off of the games that are submitted. No, I mean, it's one route, Anch. We were basically what I'm doing right now is any games that are getting posted on the Discord, I was gonna add to the slaughter list. I'm gonna try to make it so that there's really only three ways to submit games, like either the post game section on the discords, either of those two, and then I'm posting them off of the discords into the slaughter list. But look, we'll get to everything eventually. It's awesome to have enough material, and it's really great to have everyone participating and the ability to review everything. But yeah, it's kind of a it's kind of a mix at this point. But we'll flesh it out and we'll get to everything that everyone's posted so far. But it's great to have enough material for sure. Um, yeah. So anyways, this no, that's cool too, Hyperion. Everything everything that everyone sends, especially for the next few days, is gonna just get added to the list. Um, I think eventually I want to try to move towards the slaughter list or the Discord posting. But it'll all get anything that's been sent is gonna get looked at. I guarantee it. Um, but I do need to sort of streamline this from an organizational perspective. It's just actually super awesome. It adds new challenges, but it's really exciting that people are participating. Morning, Aphelion. How are you? Uh, Anyways, so this game is 1 out of 1G3, and basically flank opening for white here. Somewhat unchallenging for black. Black gets kind of the normal king or queen's pawn opening against flank opening situation. Big space advantage. These fianchettoed bishops are strong, but they need support either from pawns or knights to really try to secure a additional material or a material win for white. Um, I was looking, so I started this lesson off by taking a little bit of a look at what the actual like top book line against G3 is, because I didn't know it. So here, if we just go to the most popular move out of the opening book, it basically turns into a pretty interesting sort of modern type position with an early e4 break. Black has a big spatial advantage in the center, and ultimately, like, this spatial advantage provides opportunities for black to develop his pieces to healthier squares. That's probably his biggest advantage in this situation. These pieces look pretty healthy. In terms of development, this bishop probably develops to either c5 or d6, but both are pretty solid diagonals. Probably c5 is a little bit better. Um, uh, but this bishop on c1 does not have the same ability to develop. With this knight on d2. So anyways, this is not really the game. This is just sort of the mainline theory. What do you do if your opponent plays g3? And the most conservative idea is to play straightforward developing moves and ones that are popular in the opening book. And this basically very quick, solid development and playing developing the bishop before the knight is favorable to black here. Good healthy development, good pieces, good minor pieces, and control of a lot of squares. Yeah. The actual so that's the opening theory out of this game. But let's look at what actually happened. Here, black takes a very solid spatial advantage in the center, and white fianchettos his bishops to g2 and b2. It's an interesting situation. Um, this is yeah, I mean, this is basically the trade that black is making. The engine evaluates the position as better for black, largely based off of the control of the center and the spatial advantage. But in as like most flank openings, white's gonna hope for an overextension by black and then a pawn break at the appropriate time. Bishop d6, knight f3, castles, and the position's just the eval is going to show slightly better for black, better than equality, until white challenges his center control and spatial advantage. Hey, good morning, Tarash. Thank you for being here. Thanks everyone for joining. Um, Yeah. So I guess I would say that maybe this queen or this queenside knight is probably gonna have to be moved from this square. A3 kicks it pretty easily. But yeah, at the end of this, Black is still showing this really solid control of the center, control of the fifth rank, which is the basically means that he has an extra rank relative to White, in terms of center control. And when the knight gets kicked, he can go to knight to c7. Um, this is yeah, this is interesting. Um, but the main thing has held true. White basically hasn't played a central pawn move, either d4 or e4. And as a result, these two pawns here have gone unchallenged, and the center belongs to black. So I guess here, you know, there's going to be some trading on the queen side. This b5 pawn looks vulnerable, and I think this is going to offer some opportunities for black. Overall here, I think black's played a pretty solid game. I think it's been you know it's really kind of a question of how black turns the initiative that he had when white played an unchallenging opening, and turning that into either a positional or either a material gain or something that will lead to a win. So here, rook takes, knight d2, and I think basically this queen side is really powerful for black. Black's showing about a 3 pawn edge. This b4 5 pawn is gonna fall, and potential queening opportunities for this pawn. The pawn's never gonna queen, but it may be forced into being traded for a minor piece, which I'm sure would lead to a win for black. Um, the pawn structure is technically symmetrical here, but favorable to black, for sure at the end of the day. Um, Queen takes, knight takes, and overall here, black will have to execute well tactically, but basically this pawn is gonna create good opportunities for him. I don't know if maybe b6, b3, and then bishop to a3 might be the play. It's kind of an interesting question of how to get this pawn further advanced. The white king is probably a little bit better positioned than the black king, but at the very least, black is up a pawn, and the effort that white's going to need to stop that pawn from queening or stop that pawn for trading for a minor piece will give black the opportunity to win on the king side. So yeah, basically all of white's pieces are anchored to defending this b4 pawn, which is passed. And while those pieces are anchored, black should be able to make advancements on the king side, create a pass pawn over there, and maybe also take the e4 pawn, which is hanging. But I think here this we can go to the end and see kind of how this turns into a winning endgame. Yeah, so black ends up getting an extra pawn here. So she was 2 pawns up, and then basically eliminating all these pawns. I'm not sure if that minor piece sacrifice was necessary for black, but it seemed to work. So okay. Yeah, so we can take a look at this endgame. But let's go see if there's any middle game thoughts first. I don't know if there's going to be that many. I mean, I basically think that Black played a pretty solid game, capitalizing on White's on basically his positional and central advantage versus White. But I don't know. We'll take a look. Um, yeah, I think all of this middle gameplay really was good. There's a tactical break here for white. I guess we can see f4 challenges black center for the first time in this game, um, but e4 neutralizes the white's opportunity. So here, like, I guess black is going for bishop to g4, and if black plays an unchallenging tempo here, white plays f4 and threatens to neutralize this center, and then also threaten to double the pawns on f6 and f7. So anyways, it's pretty interesting. There's a lot of sort of middle game complexity, but I think the most important thing just in terms of the way that this game went, is let's take a look and focus on the end game here. Black's played a good game. You know, there's slight inefficiencies from either side, but I think the most striking thing in this game, and the the thing that I think might be a place to look for an improvement is in this end game here. This from here, this should be a win for Black, and probably the most conservative way to do it is actually with Bishop to G3 here. Um, I think that Black has the right idea in that neutralizing and sacrificing a pawn here in sacrificing material here is probably the way to move forward. But I would do that with by sacrificing the pawn on B2 as opposed to the bishop on E5. So here I would say like bishop to G3, and it's going to be interesting because Black will have an opportunity to win this game with a bishop and 2 pawn advantage, which isn't the easiest thing to do. I mean, the bishop is the wrong color for this pawn here, but I think once Black clears out these H4 and G5 pawns, things are going to go pretty quickly in terms of neutralizing and getting a good position. So I think that's the improvement here. I think there's a lot of things that I think basically Black is going to have a lot of things to hold on to, and this is going to be kind of tricky. But on bishop to G3, this is a more straightforward way to neutralize and ultimately queen a pawn. So yeah, so I guess I'd say I'm in favor of that. King to b1, and then bishop to g3, and maybe take the pawns with the bishop too, and start pushing the h5 pawn. It's probably the most straightforward endgame plan. H5, king takes, king takes, king takes, and here the knight can't trade for the bishop. I mean, that'll be a pretty clear win for Black. But just going with what the computer's plan here is, getting this pawn very advanced, securing. I don't understand why the knight is moving like that. So I guess I would say here, I don't know why the computer is sort of advocating inferior moves from white. But either way, this is going to consolidate to a winning endgame for Black. These 2 pawns, G pawn and H pawn and bishop, will win against king and knight. Probably just I guess an endgame takeaway. I don't know if there's a better opportunity. Maybe there's ways that white can secure winning chances with that kind of material, but I think it's pretty clear to say that Black's chances are better, and significantly better with G and H or A and B pawns and a bishop against a knight. That should win, particularly with the white king so displaced. So yeah, so I think Black played a good middle game. There's probably small efficiencies that can be gained here. But this game was basically decided off of a premature sacrifice of the bishop by Black. In the end game, sacrificing the minor piece is probably something that Black will be okay with at some point. But that comes when the pawns are further advanced. When the pawns are this close, I don't think it's no. I mean, it's totally understandable, chess fan. You played a solid game, and I think from here you're showing a -4 in an endgame position. So I think it's a win for you. I didn't know if it was intentional or not, but anyways, that's too bad. I mean, it's this is, as an endgame study, I think will end up being I think this will end up being a win for Black. Even here, Black has good winning chances. If we take it from this point here, this is the latest possible point at which Black is showing a win. We can just play out this game. But this position does demonstrate that even the pawns here, especially if Black can secure the entrance squares for the defense from the king, Black will win this. So this winning line here ends up being, basically this ends up being pretty solid for Black. And then g4 here is or king g1 and then g4 is going to be the winning push. Either way is a win. So I see g4 here. Um, yeah. So let's take a look at that. I didn't see the brilliant move there. Oh, here. This king c2 brilliancy. Uh, yeah, that's a bit generous of the engine, chess fan. Um, yeah. Maybe king f2, but yeah, that is a fairly generous brilliancy. Is king f1 also a brilliancy? I don't know. Uh, it's the engine can be weird sometimes. Just as a quick demonstration, king c2 is a brilliancy, but then king c1 is evaluated as the best move. So the best move is not the brilliancy here. Uh, and in fact, yeah. So basically, wait, so let's pause for a second. So on this particular endgame situation, so white's choosing between endgame moves. If he plays king c2, it's a brilliancy and leads to -1. But then this king c1 move is the best, but leads to a way worse eval than the alternative, which was the brilliancy. So some interesting things in the way that I mean these things are extremely hard to do from a programming perspective. So I understand, I understand it. I haven't done too much. I am a programmer, so I understand some of this stuff, but I haven't done much work with chess engines. But it is sort of interesting here how the brilliancy is brilliant when you do it, and then not the best when you do something else. Um, so I don't know. Uh, points to an interesting thing with just the eval here. Yeah, no. This is interesting for sure. It's not useless. I mean, they're both kind of interesting ideas, but it is funny how that happened. Um, anyways, whatever. Um, the main thing that was decisive here was yeah, no. I mean, the engine's a good guideline. I just sort of think that it's kind of funny that the annotation was like that. Um, but yeah, the engine doesn't, and especially that you're right in the sense that like the engine, the engine can evaluate things wrong. Like I think it's got that Traxler game kind of, uh, it's kind of tricky in that Traxler game. But anyways, this is pretty funny. Uh, here, basically this is the move that decides the game, which is time pressure. That makes sense, and that happens to everyone. Puzzle battle is a cool way to try to work on your time pressure skills. It's just super fast. It's a good way to develop relatively super fast, relatively superficial tactics. Is puzzle battles a good way to train for those. um Anyways, this end game is a win for black. Um, yeah, no. Of course, thank you for sending it in, chess fan, and I appreciate all the material that everyone sends. It's all super interesting. And but this game is decided in the end game. Basically, it was a well played game for black where he secured a spatial advantage and a developmental advantage out of the opening and early middle game, and then this is what decided the game basically is king takes h4. Bishop g3, keeping everything defended but sacrificing the b2 pawn, allows black to get this bishop and two pawn structure against the knight, and that should consolidate to a win. I mean, like practically the two pawns alone sacrifice or traded into a win. Like there were points at which this two pawn endgame was also a win. So if you throw the bishop into that and manage to keep all of those pieces, it's gonna win even if the king has a few extra tempos to move in on defense. Uh, yeah, overall, super interesting game. Shows the strengths of aggressive opening play against a flank opening. White basically never equalized from until the very end. From about move um, from about move 4. As soon as black started taking the center, he played cautiously and didn't really make any errors. So in the standard flank opening against center pawn opening, white never got sort of the equalizing pawn move that he needed. But yeah, Thank you very much for sending it, Chess Fan. Please keep sending them. Everybody, please keep sending them. I appreciate you participating and being here. So here's so basically it was minus point 0.3 and then increased to about 7. I mean, you can see from the eval that this game was really pretty much white never equalized until the very end. Um, yeah. I mean, Puzzle Battle does help with your speed. It probably, it's kind of an interesting question of whether, it creates, it encourages being a little bit less accurate. But overall, Puzzle Battle will really help in those types of endgame positions, where it basically, you need to, if you really are in time pressure, like under 30 seconds, it will help you with quick decision making. The decisions might be a little bit more superficial, but in general, you'll feel much more comfortable playing in time pressure if you have a tight, timed tactics trainer. Um, cool. So here, hey, thank you very much for redeeming the coins. To be completely honest, Chess Fan, I don't know either. I should probably learn what the coins mean, but I appreciate you highlighting them and acquiring them, or however that works. I gotta learn Twitch a little better. But thank you very much for highlighting your message. Yeah, I guess I don't know. Honestly, I'm just doing this for fun, and my hope is that chess lessons become free and available for everyone. Um, I so mostly I would say don't I don't want to say don't send money, but I'm definitely not doing this for money. I'm doing this because I think this is the best thing for chess. Um, but uh, but yeah, feel free to check out Twitch's functionality. I don't know how it works. I'll probably learn at some point, and maybe soon. I don't know. But cool highlighted message there, chess fan, and thank you very much for observing and participating and sending the game. Um, cool. That works just fine, chess fan. Jen was saying that there might be some emojis that we can make for those redeemable coins or something. Jen knows better than I do. I don't really know. Um, so let's take a look at this one. This one is a flank opening played by white. Um, it's black gets the standard center control, and white gets the and basically white gets the unshadowed bishop, and this I think is pretty good. So white here, you know, basically white here has a positive eval, but this kind of challenging, I don't know. Basically I think white needs to come up with a quick challenge in the center. This positive eval is based off of either d4 or c4 getting played on the next move. If white plays something other than those two, he's going to uh, uh, it's funny. Maybe I should send like a Discord that's a Rickroll at some point. I think that would be funny. Like one of the links in the chat or something. Um, but yeah. So here D4 castles, C3, and it's pretty close to equality. Um, so let's see. Um, uh, I think the viewer was black here, so let's take it from black's perspective. Um, Here, Black gets pretty good development. He gets what I think is the better side of this against the flank opening. He gets the center control against G3. C6 is probably what I would play. C5 is an even more challenging move, so I think that's good. Putting pressure on White, who is underextended, or basically has played very passively, is probably the best course of strategy. Bishop to B7, but you can see from the eval here that black has basically equalized. Probably pawn takes d4. Is maybe not the next move, but is a move that can be played and will lead to an isolated queen's pawn position for white. Or if the knight takes a position in which black has it's an asymmetrical center, but black has an extra pawn on e6 with a little bit of better center control. Um, anyways, pawn takes, queen c7, knight d4. Uh, nah, and honestly, like I said, I'm not doing this for the money. I'm doing it because I think chess lessons should be free for everyone. I guess my hope eventually is that some grandmaster comes in and starts giving completely free lessons for hours a day. That's my hope, to be honest. Is I think this is a really good next step in providing free lessons, but my hope at the end of the day is that the best quality free lessons come in for everyone, and then if you want to learn chess, whoever you are, you'll be able to learn chess without paying. I don't know chess fan, to be honest, but that's the goal. So in terms of money, just reiterating, please, I would say I would prefer you guys send money or donate money somewhere than sending it to me for the chess streams. That's def you know that's the recommendation that I'd make. The goal in my mind is 100% free lessons for everyone forever. Uh, that's what I want. So if a grandmaster like Kasparov or somebody came in tomorrow and started giving completely free lessons that were at a higher level than mine, I would be very happy with that outcome. Um, anyways, that's me off my soapbox. Hope that didn't slow down the lesson too much. But on the topic of money, please don't spend it, donate it, or spend it on something cool for yourself. The goal here is free lessons for everyone. That's why this channel exists. Let's go through this. Um, Basically, black gets an earlier center. Uh, I completely agree, Hyperion. That's what I'm going for. Uh, that's the best thing for the world. That's the best thing for chess. That's why I'm here and doing this experiment. Um, yeah. So here, this basically black has equalized here, and it's solid. Attacking chances maybe queen b7 on king g1. Not 100% sure, but I think that's a potential plan that black will have. Black's probably going to challenge on this c file. Giving white this c file unchallenged is probably dangerous for black. But thanks, Anch. But yeah, so rook c8 and then challenging this challenging here. But white needs to come up with a plan to block off this discovered check, because that discovered check obviously can't be that can't be played. So knight takes f4, pawn takes f4, rook to c8, and it's kind of a complicated position. I don't know. Maybe bishop takes e5, maybe not. These pawns are going to become a liability for white. There's basically 4 isolated pawns here, or technically 3 sets of isolated pawns and one doubled one. But this pawn structure will fall apart quickly for white in an endgame situation. So based on one of the lessons that I was thinking about from yesterday, bishop takes e5 I think is probably not the best move, since it allows the pawns to become undoubled. But yeah, here I think bishop takes e5 probably helps white more than it helps black. This knight on the outpost is very annoying, but since it doesn't lead necessarily to any direct attacks, I think it might just be better to hold on to your bishop and try to simplify to the endgame, probably by trading off the rooks. Engine evaluates, and I agree, rook takes rook, rook takes rook. I think is the best continuation, maybe even twice, like rook c8 again. But overall, simplification is good here. This is a winning endgame for white, who has the 2 pawn islands versus 3, and basically, and basically, I think has good chances of winning. Simplification is the right idea, so I understand bishop takes e5, but I understand rook takes c1 more, because bishop takes e5 leads to leads to simply basically bishop takes e5 leads to an improvement in white's pawn structure. Hey, thank you very much for the observe question. Thank you very much for joining the stream. So yeah, so bishop takes e5, rook takes c1, and yeah, basically black has a more open position and more lines of attack, and capitalizes by taking this a2 pawn. White threatens mate. It's a dangerous situation, but by here, things have really simplified. White's up 3 pawns, or black's up 3 pawns, and it's a win for black. So yeah, so let's go through it. Um, uh, anyways, this is this is basically better for black, and will continue to get better and better for black as the position gets more simplified. So yeah, so these 4 pawns here are pretty weakening for white. They do offer this rook to g7 open file, but it's not worth it, I don't think. Anyways, this yeah, this ends up being really strong for black. So yeah, let's see. Minus 0.7, minus 0.8, and better as things get simplified. I think honestly, I think black's endgame play here is pretty good. The one move I think that's worth revisiting is this one. This is probably the biggest improvement that I see in this game. I think overall it's a pretty strong, well played game. Black gets the big spatial advantage, and white doesn't get tremendous in terms of chances. From a conceptual perspective, I think this is the move that's worth revisiting. This bishop takes e5. I understand it because it clears out this knight from this outpost, and I understand it because trading off material is desirable here. But overall, these pawns are weak, and it's not worth fixing black's pawn structure here. If there's another way to trade off material, black should play it. So rook takes c1, rook takes c1, rook c8. I think is a a better play from a fundamental understanding perspective. Trading off is the right idea, but fixing white's pawn structure to do it is not a worthwhile trade. Cool. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll try to maybe we'll try to add some other functionality or something. If we had like a cool emoji set, that would be kind of nice. But yeah, interesting, chess fan. I should learn that system better. I don't know it at this point. Um. Anyways, rook takes c1. I prefer over bishop takes. I think this trade might happen later. Bishop takes over or bishop takes knight, but unless it's sort of forced, I think leaving this knight on this what looks pretty good but somewhat misplaced outpost. I mean, if the knight was on f5, it would be a much more dangerous outpost than this knight on e5. This does control a lot of black squares and prevents some mobility in black territory. But overall, it's not worth trading. It's not worth trading the better minor piece and improving the pawn structure over. So anyways, I guess I would say leave the pawns attackable, or that there's I think the value of leaving the pawns attackable is underestimated here. The concept is right that you want to trade off material, but the concept is right in that you want to trade off material, but the objective, but basically the compensating aspect is not worth making the material trade of the bishop for the knight here. So the two sides in that evaluation would be trading off material to lead into a favorable endgame with a favorable pawn structure, versus so that would be one reason why you would take the knight. On the other side is the pawn improving white's pawn structure and giving up the better minor piece for the endgame. So overall, I would yes, it does chess fan, but or no, sorry, my cybersecurity class starts at at 10 a.m. on Mondays through Fridays, or sorry, it starts at noon on Mondays through Fridays. But it doesn't go on weekends. This is also the last week. I'm taking another class that starts the same day that this one ends. So my schedule is going to change around a little bit in the near future. Yeah. So my cybersecurity goes noon to 6 p.m. 5 days a week. But weekends I'm free, so I can even go long on this if I need to. On a normal weekday I can't go past noon. Although I got pretty close the other day, which was cool and worth it for sure. Um, yeah, so this simplification, ends up being good for black. Any simplification would have been good for black, but it's less. I think overall improving white's pawn structure here, offset the need to trade off that bishop for that knight. Anyways, interesting. Um, so yeah, so that's my takeaway. Is just when it comes down to these simplifying evaluations, the value of the pawn structure in the endgame is extremely important. So I would keep that type of idea in mind when taking a look at pawn structure in the taking a look at exchanges in the endgame. Sometimes it's better to delay the take or the piece trades just so uh, basically just so the pawn structure stays vulnerable later into the endgame. And bishops are also better than knights in the minor square or in the endgame. They're the better minor piece. So here, yeah, I guess I would just say this is this is the key point of the game. This is where I would revisit. Otherwise, very strong game, ends up being a strong win for black, and yeah, well played. Another center game versus flank opening, place where equality was never achieved by the flank opening player. Very interesting. Let's do the next one. Thank you very much for sending that in, Dark Side, and yeah, no, I really appreciate it. Thank you for participating. Please keep sending games. So here's another one from my friends you. I don't know. Is this the one that we looked at before, or just want to make sure I didn't put the. I could have. It's possible I put the same one twice. Um, uh, okay, yeah. Oops. In my book, I put the same game twice. Um, yeah. I got to figure out a better way to uh to organize. If anyone here has a free game, I here's like I just because I sort of messed this up. If anyone wants to send one in, we can make it part of this lesson. Uh, sorry to misorder that, but the game that I was looking at was the first one, second time. Pretty good. If not, we can take a look maybe at one of the candidates games. In fact, actually, That's probably the better option. How about we close this with a short analysis of one of the candidates games? Just since I misordered some of the games in my spreadsheet. Okay, so this is Mr. Dog's game. Yeah, no. I know everyone's watching the candidates. They're awesome, super high level played games, and I think I've been interested in doing one of them, an analysis for one of those in a while. Yeah, good opportunity to finally get to one of those. Very high level analysis. Yeah. So here, black plays a flank opening. The normal concepts apply. F6 and D6 undermine white's opening, and E5 probably gets white a little bit overextended. Um, and on A3, bishop takes C3, and we're relatively close to equality. Black's two pawns versus white's D4 pawn are a little bit complicated. I guess I would say this is a better center for black. This knight and this bishop work together to hold a lot of squares. So this is a benefit. I guess this is probably a better position for or equality for black at least, just because of the strength of the center and the spatial advantage. Castling looks pretty appealing for black here. On castling, the F file part of the extended center will become controlled by black, and yeah, and basically, this will be pretty strong. Bishop c4, d5, knight a6, and here, black, black is better. Black has a controlling command of the center, and these bishops are slightly awkwardly placed. Moving this bishop from the fianchetto position to just be basically traded for c5 on the next move is kind of a questionable choice. I say that it's sort of questionable because on the take of the knight here, pawn takes c5, and basically, yeah, Puzzle Rush is fun. But no, I said I was gonna go for I said I was gonna go for uh the candidates games. I do Puzzle Rush plenty. I do Puzzle Rush a lot, or Puzzle Battle a lot. But let's do analysis of the candidates games. It'll be my analysis. Uh, but I think, yeah, I think it'll be really, I think it'll be good, and I've wanted to do it for a while. So if we have some extra time at the end, I'll probably do a quick analysis of one of those. I'm sure that however much time I have isn't going to do it justice, but at least we can go over the basic concepts. Um, do you guys know which candidates game you might want to take a look at, just so I can get to it quickly? Um, like which was the best one so far, in your guys' opinion? It's funny, in Zoom I can do like a poll type thing, but here I don't know how to do that. So, um, but anyways, on focusing on this game, um, uh, this um, this pin is sort of questionable. Like, what's White's best case scenario here, on bishop to b4? Bishop to b4 pins the knight, I guess, to the rook. But the best, so I guess there's probably more value in this bishop b4 move, as a threat on the rook and to hold this knight from moving. But in terms of exchanging this bishop for this knight here, so let's say like some average move is made, bishop a6, bishop takes c5, takes c5 is good for black. If anything, it solidifies black's control of the center. Okay. Unless there's any objections, we'll take a look at Grishik Ding at the end of this stream. But here, I'm sort of wondering, just like, I think this is an inefficient use of time for white. I think this, since the end game of this trade is probably bishop takes c5. Is that really something that's that beneficial for white? He's given up one of his pieces that was actually controlling some part of the center, for an outposted knight that will be replaced by a pawn that will have some control of the center. So that's just something to consider. Knight takes c5. Bishop to b5, b4. I think is kind of a superficial threat. Knight takes b3, and maybe rook to b1 would be the best play. But overall, okay, so this gets pretty out of control for black pretty quickly. So let's look at that. Here, white has some advantages. I guess I would say black then. I guess I would say so. White has played this sort of questionable move that will lead to a pawn trade for bishop for the knight trade, and advance black's pawn structure, improve black's pawn structure. Here, I think that partially because this diagonal is blocked, and partially because it's covered by this d5 pawn, the engine is recommending bishop a6, which I think is actually a really cool thought. One of White's most natural developing moves is going to be castling. So to prevent that pretty effectively with bishop to a6, and to give this open diagonal to black, on the next move, as opposed to having this black diagonal stopped by d5. I think this bishop a6 here is a pretty strong move. So I guess I would advocate bishop a6, and I think that's an improvement for black over bishop to or rook to c8, which was what was played in the game. Um, Knight takes b3, and then this, unfortunately is just a uh the queen gets hung, and the game sort of ends for black. So I don't know if there's that much instructional value in showing the queen getting hung on h7. But in terms of the middle game, I think there's some interesting concepts. Um, Here, you basically have some interesting choices. Uh, on this on this move, I think bishop to a6 is definitely an improvement. And I think and I think something other than bishop b4 is an improvement as well. I think the value of this knight on c5 relative to the pawn on c5 is something to consider here. So here, like bishop to a6 is stronger. Um, this, this it ended up trading off in kind of an interesting way, but I think the strength of this knight is getting misevaluated by both sides. Bishop b4 doesn't really take into account how good bishop takes c5 is, and how pawn takes c5 is going to be an improvement for black. Basically pawn takes c5 is just fine for black here. With pawn takes c5, black has a strong center that white is not going to be able to disrupt very easily. um, so I would say, and rook c8, basically takes a look at this and, defends the knight, which would be fine if taken. So rook c8 I think is an inefficient move for black here. Um, on rook c8, I don't really understand the thinking completely because bishop takes c5, and you're going to take with the pawn anyways. And this pawn doesn't need this rook to support it. There's nothing really attacking it, and it's not a super vulnerable pawn at this point. It can't really even be attacked on the next move by like a queen e3 or something. I mean, this pawn is actually fine undefended on c5. So a more I think an improvement here would be bishop to a6, which prevents a natural developing move by white and secures a long diagonal for the bishop as opposed to a blocked off one. Um, Bishop takes c5 is just not a threat that needs to be responded to. It On bishop takes c5, black improves his center, and it is a good knight outpost, but ultimately ultimately a pawn on this outpost of c5 is almost as strong, if not as strong. Um, so yeah, so that's one takeaway, and then the other one, I think otherwise, it's a reasonably intuitively played game. Um, Black, plays a flank opening, accepts the difficulties of a flank opening, and but the one thing I would steer you towards improvement is there's an old concept, which is that the knight outposts are due to get replaced by pawns. I'm kind of butchering the eloquence in which that was written, but like that's definitely, I don't know if it's Lasker or one of the real classic high level grandmasters. From a theoretical perspective, every knight outpost is going to be replaced by a pawn at some point, or like basically like the knight outpost is temporary until an exchange leads it to be replaced by a pawn. Uh, I'm butchering it, but I'm sure that Google would be able to sort of derive that. But anyways, that's the fundamental concept, and this is a good example of it. The knight outpost is great, but on the replacement of the knight outpost by a pawn, the pawn is also very powerful and controls an important square, potentially important square for White's development. So yeah, very interesting game. And But I think in terms of things to think about, I think both sides kind of misevaluated how bad trading this bishop for this knight would be for black. You know, white is playing to trade on c5, or at least to put pressure on c5. But it doesn't really mean anything because bishop takes c5, pawn takes c5 leads to a fine position for black. Um, and then the rook c8 kind of reinforcing that need for this pawn to be defended is also a tempo that black could have used more productively. Overall, very interesting. Thank you for that. Thank you for that game. Interesting. So let's take a look at the next one. Um, okay. So here's this position. We had this position before. This is the Caro-Kann, where white plays knight f3. And this we studied this. So if anyone watched the lesson before, we know the correct response here. The response played in the last game that we looked at out of this opening was pawn takes d5, pawn takes d5, and then it led to a relatively equalizing position for black. You know, d4, then white plays d4, but it's basically a symmetrical you know, opening. So we established that the best response to this, and the most popular one, was knight to c3, not allowing black symmetry, not allowing black to move his knight to c6, which is blocked off. We know this. You know, basically, if white wants to play knight f3 against the Caro-Kann, the appropriate response is pretty objectively knight to c3. E5 here is a pretty big deviation. You know, this is, you know, there are 8,000 games played with 3 knight c3, and only 41 played with e5. Not saying that there aren't situations in which the unusual move there is the correct one, or is a very playable one. But I think we really did establish in a previous stream that on knight f3 against a Caro-Kann, the best play for white, and the one that gives black the most trouble securing equality, is knight to c3. So we know this. This is something we've established on this stream, and hopefully we've, you know, I learned that it was that objectively best, but hopefully has we know this now. C6, d5. Don't trade off the pawn on d5 against the Caro-Kann. Play knight c3. And leave this this knight with somewhat unnatural development. E5 here, bishop g4, d4, and overall, you know, basically it's a position where white has secured an advantage. You know, black could play e6 and sort of transpose it into a French-like structure, or Caro-Kann-like structure, where the bishop's on the other side of the pawn chain. But here, you know, this is you know, this d4 e5 structure will become the focus point of the game, and a maintenance point for white. Both something to be helpful in constricting black, but also to be you know, a point where white will need to maintain his strength. Okay, so it looks like there's some tactical you know, basically a few different tactical things going on here. But let's look at this position. King takes d1, and black is given a slightly better evaluation. It's kind of an interesting position. I think, you know, partially that's because these pawns without the queen on the board will probably be undermined by c5 and f6 pretty effectively. But overall, this is pretty interesting. Um, I guess, you know, black will eventually get this outpost on f5 for his knight. But I think what this basically reflects is that with a much more calmed down position, one in which there's been many more trades, you know, these pawns on d4 and e5 become more easy for black to undermine with his pawn structure. I think that must be, you know, that must be it. But in any case, it's difficult to make an opening, or it's difficult to make an argument that that white has more than equality here. I think basically black is saying I can think of reasons why black is potentially better, but I could not think of reasons why white would potentially be better here. This knight is very easily ejected with h6. Uh, Black's development is a little bit unnatural, but because white doesn't have easy mobility of his attacking pieces, the extra move or two that black will, require to secure better piece play is not going to be so much of a problem. I think black will be able to do that effectively. C3 bishop, c3, and then bishop to g4. By the way, the king didn't take c3. Yeah, no. Of course, Amet. Please keep sending your games. And always, everyone, the goal here is as much free material as possible. That's the. I won't go on my. I won't spend too much time on it. So if you can't make the stream, watch the video. Um, the point is to make chess instruction free. Um, there's a lot of tactics going on in this game. Um, a lot of complexity, tactical opportunities. This game, I guess I would just say the under 1,000. I strongly recommend following my study plan of an hour a day of tactics training on a tactics trainer of your choice: Puzzle Rush, Puzzle Battle, CT-ART, or Chess Tempo. It doesn't matter which tactics trainer it is; they all have their own strengths and weaknesses. I think that's the next route for improvement. We can look a little bit at the positional play, but just the volatility of this game points to tactics training as being the appropriate next step for improvement. But yeah, let's learn a little bit more about this knights to c3 response. I've always played the mainline Caro-Kann. I play e4, d4, and knight c3 against c6 and d5. Um, cool. I'll check it out, Topo. I've heard good things about Lichess's training too. I'm just gonna put that in my notes list, and I'll check it out later today. I'm sure it's good. Any tactics trainer is good. Any tactics trainer is gonna help you, and that and I think I don't know that one, so I can't speak well of it. But I'm sure that one will work as well. But yeah, under 1,000, under 1,200, it's all about tactics. Because at the end of the day, you can have very good understanding, but if you don't have sufficient tactical execution, you're going to run into simple errors in situations where your understanding of the position might have been quite good. So it's really about tactics. Until and especially as someone who's class level player, but and and probably up to expert or master, NM level. Tactics are extremely important. They do kind of diminish in value because most people sort of even up on their tactical vision. But that's where I would recommend spending a lot of time for a relatively long time. Um, that's the quickest route to improvement with the quickest returns. Um, yeah, but I'll check out that Lichess trainer Topo. I just don't know it at the moment. I'm sure it's good. So yeah, let's look at this knight c3 line. I'm gonna make the objective recommendation that knight c3 is the right move here, having seen the alternatives. It's about a 90% plus play, and good question, Anch. I think so I've done it a number of different ways. These days, when I just need to refresh my tactical vision, I'll do puzzle battle. So it's not themed and it's fast, and you can get a lot of puzzle vision in. But in terms of studying themed tactics, one of the things that I do remember being pretty good is that CT-ART, or like a chess-based tactics trainer, is modularized. So basically, in one of those trainers like CT-ART, you basically go and you do like all the windmill attacks, and then all of the skewer attacks, and then all of the pin attacks, and then you go through each one of them one by one, and they're separated, and they're like modules where you're doing one specific type of tactic 25 times in a row. I think that idea can be pretty helpful. The main, I would say the main thing in terms of improving is 90% actually just doing the tactics training. Like it's not like it's difficult to, yeah, sure. Uh Here, I can even I'll link it for you. Because I really do think it is good. Uh uh 1 second. Um I mean, I'm not trying to product place or anything, but this particular tactics trainer, where I when I did it, it was probably CTR 3 or something. But that one can be very helpful. It's just modules, and it goes over each one of them in order. It's a good and well organized way to learn tactics training. I found this one very helpful. Um, I don't mean to advertise that one over other tactics trainers. It's just the one that specifically I used. Um, so yeah. Um, uh, Here I'm gonna because I want to learn this theory a little better, and we know it. Knight to c3 is the move. Yeah, no, I think it's a really good one, Anch. I think it'll help. It takes time. It takes hours and hours. But if you go through that thing front to back, you're gonna be in good shape from a tactical perspective. I guarantee it. Tactics training is pretty much a requirement to get to master level. There's really, you have to put that time in at some point. I know no masters who haven't. Um, I know some that say they might not, but I guarantee you every master has spent a lot of time doing tactics training. Um, yeah, so knight to c3, bishop to g4, and then yeah, h3 or d4 here, um, and basically white's showing almost a one pawn advantage. We can just learn this theory a little bit better. D4, e6. This even sort of transposes into the main the main type of Caro-Kann. It's basically mainline Caro-Kann, with black having made some slightly awkward moves. But we can keep going through the opening book here. Bishop e2, e5, knight e5, queen takes, and yeah, I mean, this is still going to be evaluated as pretty good for white. But actually, let's go back. I think there is a deviation from the really popular stuff here. So d4 is actually not the thing. H3 is the main line. H3, bishop takes h3, queen takes e6, d3, knight f6, bishop d2, knight bd7, and here, white's certainly secured the initiative and is at the point of turning the early game initiative into a lasting advantage. G4, H6, castles, bishop B4, and yeah, I'm sure white's still almost a pawn up in terms of. Uh, just looking at this position, um, white has the bishop pair. That's one of his main advantages. Um, uh, Neither side is super comfortable for black to castle on. Here, I guess I would recommend black castles queenside. In fact, I almost required that black castles queenside. Um, Here, basically, the castling kingside here would lead to a very aggressive attack against black. G5 would be easy to play. These rooks would be very easy to move over to the H and G files where they can support an attack, and this bishop is oriented towards black's dark squares. Yeah. Here, I guess, yeah, probably bishop. I guess the main line here was h3, but anyways, this game was very tactically oriented. All right, I've got a new idea, which is every time I there's a game where I think that the main thing was had to do with tactics, I'll post a link to a tactics trainer, or post a link to a set of tactics trainer, or a list of tactics trainers, because you know, I can try to provide some help with the understanding. But at the end of the day, I think the main route to improvement for players at this level is just to do your tactics training. It's really just a requirement. Um, you know, understanding related thoughts are good, but any understanding is going to get overwhelmed if you know, before you do your tactical training. Um, so yeah, so here, uh, we've now established knight to c3 is the move. Anyone who's interested in playing the knight f3 Caro-Kann, knight c3 is 100% the way to go. This is a 90+% opening move, and everything else leads to an objectively significantly worse eval. It's not the most obvious thing in the world, but it does help for the fundamental reason that the knight is black's knight on the queen side is forced into somewhat difficult development. And Here, you know, there's you know, providing equality to black and a better developing square for black's queenside knight is not the best play for white. Objectively, here, just this position, play knight c3 on move 3. Something I learned, and but the case. Cool. Next game. So this is the last game. And after this, we're gonna take a look at Grishit Ding for a few minutes, and then we'll call it a day till tonight. But thank you all very much for being here and sending your games. Um, cool. So here, this is a game sent to us by Cagnus Marlson. Cool screen name, I like it. And against another streamer who I was watching for a minute the other day, who's the magician. Um, so here, basically, white has some pretty good. This is the Benko Gambit. This early c5, and we'll take a look. Benoni Benko Gambit, which is characterized by b5 after d5 in the Benoni. Okay. Here, there's a few options. Main line is accepting the gambit c takes b5. Main declining move is knight f3, which is a straightforward developing move. And with the expectation that if bishop takes, or with if pawn takes c4 is played, knight c3 and e4 will be played soon after that. And the you know, unless black wants to play a line in which he defends with the bishop, this pawn on c4 will be recaptured by white. Let's actually look. You know, I'm just gonna play through the game really quickly, just to get a sense of it. Um, this looks pretty solid. Um, I'm guessing this is probably a blitz game, because it ends right here, with a lot of play left. But yeah, let's look at this. Uh, Interesting. Okay. I think this might be. This is a good and well played game. But I'm gonna take a minute or two to just look at the mainline Benko Gambit. I don't think the mainline Benko Gambit is refuted, but I don't think it's considered to be the highest level, you know, Grandmaster idea. So let's just look at Benko Gambit accepted and see what the mainline progression of this is. Um, Basically looks like white allows this kingside displacement on f1 in exchange for black's dark squared bishop. White gets a connected passed pawn on a2, which could potentially become valuable much later in the game. And both sides are going to try to probably develop in a normal way. king g2, knight d7. Yeah, looks pretty good. Yeah, white's gonna start advancing this freed rook pawn, and basically white has control of the center and slightly better piece play. I don't know, unclear piece play, but and this a5 advantage. So white's advantages are this pass pawn on the queen side, which can restrict black against this big center, and black has the advantage of kind of questionable king safety. Um, there's not maybe not an immediate plan to disrupt white's king safety, but that could this center could go from being effective to being too loose pretty quickly. Overall, let's see. I think white's probably got an eval advantage. Uh, so yeah, very interesting. Um, that's basically the main line in the Benko Gambit. Here, this is an early. So the deviating line here was 5 e3. The main accepting line is pawn takes b5. The main declining line is knight to f3, which is straightforward development and opportunities later to recapture the c4 pawn with the f1 bishop. But white plays the offbeat e3 here. Black plays e6, knight f3, pawn takes c4, bishop takes c4, and we're in basically a super early neutralizing of everyone's pawn structure. I think white's got to be better here. I'd be very surprised if white wasn't better. Knight c6 is obviously forced on the next move, so I guess we can play the forced move, but basically white has secured relatively good development, good developing squares like knight c3. E4 is coming, so eventually the rook will probably or the bishop will probably go to e3 or f4. And I don't know. I guess I would just say it's overall a pretty healthy position for white. Another big advantage for white here, the stronger pawn structure. Black has 3 pawn islands, white has 2. And that pawn structure probably is worth about 0.4 pawns. So overall, that vulnerability will become something to attack later in the game. But Black's minor pieces here, I think, are a pretty are basically Black's primary strength. This white squared bishop will move to b7, and eventually find a way to be defended enough to control these white squares. And White's 2 knights. Ideally, White's going to want to trade for one of the bishops and remove Black from having the bishop pair. But basically, it will be kind of a challenge for him to do that. It's going to take a lot of developing moves. Anyways, castles, bishop e7, knight e5, black or white quickly consolidates a material advantage. Now black's piece play is actually noticeably better than white's. That's what provides his compensation here. So rook b8, bishop b7, and then queen d5 coming. So attacks can potentially get started pretty quickly, with white relatively underdeveloped, and black's bishops on strong diagonals. White is probably going to have to withstand an attack here, but in return, he has a pawn of material to play with if he needs to sacrifice it at some point. This plays into a pretty interesting situation. Yeah, okay. This game I assume ended due to time pressure. Um, but yeah, overall, it's an opposite colored bishop endgame. Probably slightly better chances for white. Um, but probably practically I would guess that this is probably a draw. Um, White has some vulnerabilities on this a2 pawn, and a weaker, basically doesn't control the b file, which is kind of a liability. But white I think will have reasonably good chances of getting out of this. Maybe bishop to d6 and a3 to just to shore up this pawn structure. Black's path forward here is going to revolve around creating attacks on a2 and c3. If either one of those falls, it's going to be pretty good for black. But I think maybe he won't be able to. Anyways, interesting. Um, uh, so everything trades. White gets the material edge, and then goes up against piece play. Um, Pretty interesting. Okay, cool. And yeah, white finishes better. But the game ends. In terms of improvements here, I guess this opening is very offbeat and rough. I think we should probably since I think White played this game pretty well, and it's also not a complete game, just because it runs out of time. I think it's worth kind of going over Benko game theory here. I'm gonna assume that White wants to decline the Benko gambit. Um, the main line here is to accept the Benko gambit. What's played about 75% of the time is c takes b5, accepting the gambit. But White, by playing e3, sort of shows me that he's interested in declining it. So let's look at over one of the more prominent declined lines. Knight f3, e6, bishop g5, pawn takes d5, pawn takes d5, d6, and e4. This pawn is not undefended. This pawn is fine. This bishop pin is gonna keep it from getting taken. So it's an interesting position. Very asymmetrical. There's a threat on b5 by this bishop, taking with check. So a6 is the mainline response. Yeah, no. So I do think that, if we go back to the, yeah, no, I think you're right, Aphelion. If we go back to, this position here, c takes b5 is about a 75%, 75% move here. The Benko gambit is definitely one that can be accepted and beaten. Yeah, no, is that, I always forget. That's Bobby Fischer, right? I know it's one of the top level grandmasters. Or was it an earlier one? Was it like Morphe or something? I think maybe it was Morphe. Anyways, yeah, I forget too. I'll look it up after the stream, because I'm curious. But yeah, so here, c takes b5 is the most yeah. So it is risky. Um, uh, so knight f3 is the main declining line. I'm not sure I'm gonna advocate. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not. Don't know if I'm advocating declining or accepting the b5 pawn. But in any case, um, uh, this oh, and one more thing, Aphelion. Aphelion, just since we have a minute and it's a little bit quiet this morning, Aphelion asked for some of my games from the most recent Indiana State Chess Championship, which is a tournament I played last weekend. And I actually got you 3 of them. So I want to make sure that I have them marked up correctly. So but bear with me for a second, Aphelion, and I'll send you. I'll send. I thought I had 3, but maybe I only have 2. Um, uh, this is my game against uh, yeah, no, you asked for him, so I felt bad that I didn't get to it sooner. But here's 2. Uh, this is the game against okay. Yeah, no, for sure. No, I have 2 for you. I wanted to get all 5 of them, but is it possible to put You know what? I'll put it in. Do you have the link to the Discord channel, Aphelion? I'm just thinking in terms of ways to upload here. Um, I'll put them in my Discord. Uh, just under like uh, we'll say game submissions. Um, um, yeah, so no. So here, I'll give you no. I have an official Discord for this this stream now. So I'll give you the link. I'll just post the link here right now. I posted two PGNs for that that tournament into the Discord. But I wanted to get back to you on that because I know you asked me for it, and I thought it was a pretty reasonable thing. So I have at least those two games. I'll probably get to the other ones later when I get a minute, but pretty busy over here. So yeah, so here C takes b5 is the most common move, just to accept it. But knight f3, e6, bishop g5, pawn takes d5, pawn takes d5. Yeah, no, of course, Aphelion. No, thank you for it. I'm happy to do it. It's material I should be going over anyway, so thank you. Thank you for prompting me on that. I have the other three too. I'll probably get to those sooner or later. Hopefully sooner. Um, yeah. So here, basically, white has secured an advantage. And just so we look, so basically e3 is still a move that allows white to have the initiative. But the most popular gambit declining move is knight f3, e6, bishop g5, e takes, c takes, d takes, and then e4, and then a6 because this pawn on b5 is getting threatened. But a4 is basically white challenges it, and black has this big kind of queenside expansion going against a relatively safe white king after castling, and black also has it's a very complicated position. There's many different characteristics, but black has this blocked in bishop. White's bishop is probably going to go to g4. Bishop e2 is the healthiest place to develop. Knight c3 might not be playable for white, but I think knight c3. I think knight d2 is probably a safer way to play it. But yeah, ultimately, this is gonna be pretty good for white. It's basically this queenside expansion for black can be undermined. But at the same time, it's a sharp and complicated position. There are books written about it. The Benko Gambit declined. That's the main line. The main declining line. The main line is accepting the gambit. But the main declining line is playing three knight f3 followed by bishop g5. Overall, yeah, pretty interesting. Interesting stuff. Um, yeah, pawn takes and e4 and for white. Expanded this opening. Yeah, let's take a look at the Grishik Ding game. Another thing I wanted to get to, and I feel lucky that I have an opportunity to now. Um, Let me just pull the PGN for that one. And just so I know from candidates, that was the one that was just. This is a game from right now, right? Grishik Ding. Like this was a yeah. So this is a 2021 round 12. Okay, cool. Um, awesome. Let's see. I'm hoping I have kind of a weird notation here. I'm hoping that the analysis engine is going to be able to parse it. Uh, if not, I'll keep looking. But I wanted to get to this, so now I'm gonna get to it. Oh, cool. Awesome. Uh, well, wait. So, what game? I'm looking at a Ding Lai Ren. Oh, you're right. They are still looking at it. Yeah. Okay. So this is a game in progress. All right, but let's talk about it. I'm sure my analysis is gonna really be unsophisticated relative to the Grandmaster's analyzing it, but let's try to figure out exactly what happened. Um, okay, that's pretty funny. All right, cool. Yeah, all right. So here's the game. Um, Grishik is playing uh Grishik is playing black and Ding is playing white. Uh yeah, I'm almost discouraged from giving my take because I'm sure that a grandmaster's take is much stronger. But I will try to explain at least part of what's going on here. Grandmasters have these insanely well constructed, uh, you know, safe attacks. Like they really have like a fixed objective in every attack that makes a lot of sense. They play all the preparation moves to get it lined up, and then they ultimately execute or don't execute, but basically every attack has a construction and an execution and a conclusion. That's one of the things that I think is the most differentiating about Grandmaster games is that they really have like a strategic purpose to virtually every move. That's a differentiator between grandmasters and experts. Experts are coming up with these kind of small nickel and dime type attacks where they're aiming to pick off a pawn to a three move tactic or trick their opponent into losing a pawn to a three move tactic. Grandmasters have a coherent, basically a coherent establishment of a strategy that goes throughout the whole game. Um, so the thing, when looking at Grandmaster games, I think one of the things to think about is they're doing all the small things right. Um, their openings are excellent. They have a full understanding of why openings are played and why they're played exactly the way that they are. Their tactics are perfect. Um, so uh, so from a tactical perspective, the basically they really they make no errors. The errors that are the most differentiating at class level are ones that never occur in Grandmaster games. I think for that reason, Grandmaster games are often are excellent for demonstrating strategic concepts, but they won't fix low level play. Low level play is dictated by tactics. Probably, you know, under 1500, 90% of the games are determined by a tactical misstep. At high level grandmaster play, 0% of the games are determined by a tactical misstep, or 2%. Although what I'm doing is I'm kind of adjusting the definition of tactical misstep. Tactical misstep to me means losing a tangible amount of material to particular execution. A tactical misstep for in a grandmaster game is having a play the tactic leads to a discernible positional advantage, and then the compounding of multiple positional advantages might potentially lead to a pickup of material. But the differentiating thing between grandmasters and between grandmasters and lower level players is because the tactics are perfect. The tactics are perfect to the sense that there's almost nothing that directly hangs or wins material by force in isolation. Um, I guess I don't know. I guess I would just say grandmasters don't really have a way of it's chess as a spectator sport is really interesting. So the thing about grandmaster level play is it has a lot to do with tactical perfection. Um, you know, they the highest level grandmasters and the spectators of grandmaster games can explain why they the strategic concepts behind all the moves, and they can explain very artistically cool and complicated high level grandmaster play. But from a spectator perspective, you really fixing the changes that most casual players experience has to do with tactical perfection, which is something that by itself probably takes 3 to 5 years of extensive study. I mean, I'm not at it yet. I'm pretty strong tactically, but I wouldn't say that I'm at grandmaster level tactically. I mean, I might be at IM level master tactically. It's the strongest aspect of my game. But the point of grandmaster play is, you can understand a grandmaster level game from a strategic perspective, but that won't actually help you if you're a casual observer of the game, because the concepts are beautiful, but if you're not playing in a tactically clean way, you're not going to be able to you're basically not going to be able to uh, execute the positions. Like, you'll have a great understanding of exactly why the Sicilian is played in this way, and you'll have the very instructive Grandmaster game to draw from, and you'll have the annotation of the Grandmaster game to draw from. But if your tactical concepts aren't good enough, you're not going to be able to you're not going to be able to you're gonna have the full understanding, but lack the execution to draw from. Anyways, sorry to go on my tangent. Grandmaster games are very complicated, but I think that that's something that kind of gets missed a little bit with chess as like a spectator sport, which is you can have excellent understanding, but if your tactics don't line up, what value ending to you? Um, okay, cool. Let's look. Uh, high very high level games. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to add. Strategically, an interesting move here played by Ding is this c5 move. This c5 move is you know basically c5 is constricting to black, but runs the risk of getting basically tactically undermined by b6. B6, is the type of move that could possibly yeah, no, exactly. I don't mean to be too tough about it, but I would just say, like, you until you're a master, or until you're an expert, so somewhere around that range, you really should be working on tactics as a very high percentage of your study time. It's awesome to learn the positional concepts, but it's kind of like, and I remember it super well from being a class level player. Like, I'd have some understanding of the concepts behind opening, and I understand some of the hanging pawns or pieces to 2 or 3 move tactics. It's just not it's just not that there's no really route forward. Like, I could have a really high level understanding, but if I'm hanging a piece in the middle of it when my opponent makes some kind of deviation, I'm out of luck. Um, yeah, no. So GMs use tactics for positional advantages. At that point, they're also tactically strong that that basically you can't really catch up. You basically you can't trick them with any kind of 3 move tactic. The type of thing that would work really well in a game between like an expert and a C player or something. Um, it's yeah, their tactics are also strong, that a tactical advantage for them is a slight positional improvement. That's the end goal of their tactical execution. Yeah, hey, welcome back, Doc. Thank you very much for joining the stream. Um, yeah. Anyways, Uh, Bishop e7, bishop f4, castles. Yeah, c5 thematically is the type of move that could potentially be tricky. It has both good. It's a kind of a double-edged move. It runs the risk of overextension, but it also basically runs the risk of overextension, but it also constricts black's development. Um, this was a trade that was deliberate for white. White was fine with doubling these pawns on the f file. Those could potentially become an endgame liability, but they do open some lines for attack from white on black here. Um, Black plays this undermining b6 move, b4, a5, a3. A lot of tactical complexity on the queen side. Um, you know, uh, Interesting. Um, Black is choosing to close this position. Um, and White is making tons of maneuvering points. White is maximizing to the highest degree the accuracy of where his pieces are placed. All of this, like, basically, White's gonna try to knock. I think White's gonna try to knock Black out of the A file, would be my guess. And in order to do it, he's really lining up his knights in exactly the right way. Um, and now he does it. And now he tries now at on move 38, he finally challenges Black on the queen side, and he wanted to do it super efficiently. So he made the effort to play knight c1 before he played, or he made the effort to have knight d3 available to play knight to c1, midway through this attack. Um, but yeah, these are very superficial notes. I think these guys are so ridiculously strong that I think the value of a grandmaster's assessment is significantly better than mine at telling you exactly why um, this why what the strategies are here. Black obviously had this long-term strategy of getting in through the A file with his rooks, and White had the strategy of basically knocking the rooks out of that A file at a later point, in a way that would be favorable to White upon the removal of the black rooks on the A file from White's position. Um, yeah. So here, um, engine's looking good for White. White's strategy of knocking the rooks out, at a favorable time worked out well. It looks like there's some type of inefficiency here. I guess it was Rook A6 was sort of a wasted tempo. Maybe, I don't know. It's just extremely high level play. I mean, even as a master, I would say, coming up with attacks that are this kind of extended and coherent is a very difficult thing to do. But it's all predicated on tactical perfection at the beginning. Tactical perfection is like step one. Every master is perfect. Every grandmaster is like tactically perfect, and especially tactically perfect in a slow game. They just don't get tricked into three move tactical losses of a pawn or two. Like, it just doesn't happen. Um, so for 95% of people, achieving that step one of having a strong and accurate tactical base is really where the time should be spent from a study perspective. I don't think you should do it to the point where the other parts of your game have atrophied, but like that's the next step, I think. And it's something that someone can't teach you. It's something that you really just have to use a trainer, like either one of the classic books like Block or a tactics trainer, one of the CT-ART, to get to the point where you don't have great, you could have spend a lot of time and have great understanding, but if the tactics don't line up, you'll be making costly errors with good understanding. Um, Anyways, Grishik, I think you guys should watch that. That's probably a better broadcast than I can provide. This Ding Grishik game, but overall, I think it's a pretty good uh, this is a good demonstration of very high level chess and play. The two plans of the rooks controlling the a file, and then the white's plan of efficiently knocking the rooks off of the a file, I think, is the operative point of this game. Uh, yeah, very interesting stuff. Uh, I think yeah, really really cool. Uh, go enjoy that stream. I'm sure the grandmasters commentating it will have some insights, but from a training perspective, step one is getting tactical perfection because all the grandmasters have it, and you can't really even start, or you can't know that you're going to effectively complete a well constructed game unless you know that you've screened uh, all of the superficial errors out of your game. And by that point, you're an expert or master, anyways. A lot of interesting things. The top games are very artistic, and I hope you guys enjoy them. It's very cool. But yeah, that's sort of my takeaway from Grandmaster Analysis, the candidates games, and I hope you guys have fun with watching these streams. It really is cool to see the high level stuff. Um, yeah, so thank you all very much for sending your games and participating in the stream. And yeah, we'll be back tonight at 10 or at 6:05 p.m. Eastern. And yeah, have a good day, everyone. Bye.